Good morning, everybody. My name's John Ciancio. I'm your host for the Private Eye Nightline. Got a great show lined up for you today. We have Nancy Payne in the studio with us. Hi, Nancy. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. Hi, John.
Look, I want to thank you for joining us today. Nancy Payne was a client of mine from about how many years ago? Seven?
7.
Years ago. I asked Nancy to join us today so she could share with our listeners some of the problems in her marriage that she went through and what she had to go through to overcome it. So we're gonna. She has some serious issues that she had to confront. It's going to be very interesting. Not often do I get to stay in touch with my clients. Usually after we service the clients, they move on. And but Nancy, I was able to stay in touch. I actually got to see her go from what I call pure hell and back, and how she overcame it. So Nancy, if you would, why don't you just share with the listeners a little bit about, if I remember correctly, you were married to a professional, very successful life. I mean, he made really good money. I think he was averaging over $500,000 a year. Lived you re-established in another state from where you grew up, married young, right?
Yes. I'm originally from New Jersey, and we moved to Pennsylvania. And my husband at the time was extremely successful in the financial fields, and we lived in a pretty prestigious area, and he was making very good money.
Okay. Typically, when you've started to sense or realize there were problems in the marriage, how long were you married before you started seeing signs that there were some troubles?
We were married 15 years before my daughter and I left the situation. I would say about a year before maybe the 14th year in, I really started to notice some major behavioral changes. I noted, that he was out late more often. Oftentimes I couldn't get him on the cell phone, just to talk to him about the day or what our child might have needed that evening or whatever. Specifically, I think what really brought it all home were the behavioral changes. When he would come home, there were definite physical changes. He was sweating a lot, yelling, using a lot of berating language, slamming things, throwing things in the house, this kind of behavior.
The behavior, and that was a change.
Yes,
yeah. It was, you, your husband, and your daughter,
Yes.
and both you and him were professionals. Great life. If you weren't working, you were with your child.
Sure.
His job called for him actually being out late at night, client meetings, and so forth. So that wasn't so much of a to put you in suspect, but it's the his anger issues, his sweating. You found some prescription bottles that were that you didn't know anything about.
Yeah, extremely questionable. The ones my ex-spouse had quite a pristine interior car. He kept the interior of his car very clean, and there were many moments actually, where when I stepped into his car, it was a mess. There were crumpled tissues, there were empty water bottles, there were light bulbs kept in the trunk. I didn't quite understand all of this behavior, and when naturally I would ask about what's going on here, I was definitely berated and told to shut up, and eventually that behavior turned to physical violence, and I would be slapped and hit, and just simply questioning these changes in behavior.
Well, for you, I mean, being married 15 years and then all of a sudden from a Cinderella lifestyle, to be confronted with this type of behavior and everything emotionally, what were you going through at that time?
Well, I think at first I was almost in denial, like that this can't be happening. I sort of lived that. I don't know if I really want to face this, and there was also a level of embarrassment. I mean, I'm in the education field, and I had to get up and go to work every day, and for me to try and cover bruises, both physical and emotional, was very difficult. So I think initially there was a lot of denial and a lot of trying to cover up what was happening, because you you marry someone, you love this person, and you're thinking, well, how can I assist or help this person, in addition to it being a family affair, if you will. You don't want your whole neighborhood to know that your husband is beating you senseless, so you sadly you make these decisions that really in the end up hurting you. You don't tell anybody anything, you cover up bruises, you don't say anything.
That denial, and it's time and time again, I see that with my clients and everything, not wanting to affect change or to start over, or because of the
And
children, fear, or all those weigh heavy in the decision making. And it's not uncommon. I know with you, you revisit the issue and you say, all right, can you make things work, and will he change, and so forth. With him, the violence, the physical abuse, it was geared towards, you had to confront with it, and you were the front line for the safety for your daughter. At what point did you decide to say, you know what, I have to leave?
There were actually 2 times that I left with my child. The very first time, my daughter and I had sort of reached a point of living in such fear of this man. And it was in the evening, and I had attempted to contact him via cell phone to find out where he was. I didn't know what was happening should I save dinner, make dinner, what was going on. I always felt like I was walking on eggshells around him, didn't know if I was going to get yelled at or for calling, or I wasn't going to get him on the phone at all. But I couldn't reach him. And my daughter had begun to say things to me, and at the time I mean, naturally, you listen to your children and you talk with your children. However, when you are also the victim of the violence, you are naturally trying to protect your child, but you're also trying to protect yourself. And my daughter began saying things like, he's weird, he's scary, I want to be away from him. That really lit a fire for me. And I began to feel like I had to save us and protect us in some way. So I left just for a few days. And I went to my parents, who were absolutely devastated about what was happening when I finally shared with them what had been going on for months in the privacy of my own home. And we then returned a few days later, and then within weeks after that, his violence and his beratings and his ruthlessness got to the point where I knew once I leave a second time, there would be no returning.
I remember, back then, 2 things I want to go back on is the communications you have with your daughter
Yeah.
is great. The fact that you two could talk. I remember telling me that you would have talks with her in a dollhouse or a tree house.
There was a little tree house. She would always go to the tree house in the backyard when Dad would get outrageously violent and start throwing things and become very nasty. And she just naturally just did that on her own, I guess, in her own way, trying to protect herself. And it was actually, we had a conversation there. I went out to the treehouse after he jumped in the car and left wherever he went. And she began to tell me that when I would leave for school in the morning, she would have to hide behind the rocking chair because he would attempt to hurt her. And I told her, whenever she feels unsafe, I want her to come to the treehouse. She'd say, "Oh, I do, Mom, I do." So we would go to the treehouse to talk.
And that, the closeness that you share, the bond is phenomenal. And listeners, I can tell you, I know this woman, and I'll tell you, when it comes to protecting her child, it's first and foremost. It's the only thing that she lives for, to protect her child, and I've seen that firsthand. You've done a great job with that, Nancy. Another point I wanted to bring out is that it's not uncommon to go back and try to make the marriage work.
Right.
Many of my clients do, even when there's infidelity or drugs or some real ugly behaviors document. It's not uncommon. You go back and you try to, punch that square peg into a round hole and see if it will fit. But it's sometimes people are able to do it, and sometimes it's not. They're telling me we're going to have to go for a break here. So when we get back, what we're going to do is talk about the transition. When you did leave and what was involved going from the court system and trying to maintain the safety too as well. So when we get back, we'll pick up right where we left off. My name's John Ciacchio. I am your host for the Private Eye Nightline. Thank you, and we'll be with you shortly.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated offers a wide array of investigative services to law firms, insurance companies, individuals, private organizations, and corporations. Our goal is to reach the case objectives and resolve the client's issues as quickly and cost-effectively as possible. Local investigative services include identity, wrongful death, drug, alcohol, and abuse, and divorce, support, custody, and family investigations. For more information, call or click today. Accredited Investigations, when you need to know.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated. Professional, licensed private detectives with over 28 years of experience, providing comprehensive nationwide services. Our extensive and diverse team offers discreet and confidential consultations. Our state-of-the-art technology and investigative resources allow us to stay in front of other investigative companies. We welcome the opportunity to earn your trust and deliver you the best service in the industry. Call Accredited Investigations Incorporated at 866-821-5258.
You're listening to the Private Eye Nightline with host John Ciacchio. To ask a question or express a concern about today's program, please call toll-free 1-866-472-5788, 1-866-472-5788. You may also send an email to info@pinightline.com. Now, back to the show.
Okay, thank you, listeners, for standing by. Again, my name's John Ciacchio. I'm the host here for the Private Eye Nightline. We have Nancy Payne in the studio, and again, I want to thank Nancy for joining us today. And I know this is heart-wrenching stuff to get you to revisit and go through. I mean, you're in such a good place today, but and I hope the listeners appreciate, the what we're asking of you to do today, to go back and relive some of this hellish nightmares. Nancy, when you made the decision to go, okay, what was the final thing that said, all right, I'm out of here?
It was in June, actually, and his behavior had just his ruthless behavior just continued to escalate. You know, throwing things in the house, hitting me, smacking Miriam, pushing us around, and this one morning I was putting some clothes away before having to go off to school for the last week of school and close down a classroom. And I was putting some clothes away, and in his underwear drawer there were 2 knives. And these weren't, I'd never seen these knives. But a light, I sort of just had this rush, this feeling that if I don't get out of this situation, I'm going to die, or my daughter is going to die, or we're both going to die at the hands of this crazy man. And my daughter's school had closed a week earlier than mine, and so I said, well, I'll be taking our daughter to school with me since I only had a half day. And she was with me, and we left. And when I got to school, I lost it. And I went directly to my department chair, and I sat down and I spoke with her about what, our experience had been in the last 8, 9, 10 months of living with this man. And she made arrangements for my room to be shut down by a fellow teacher. And I remained in her office, and the police were called, the state police were called, and I was told to go directly to the house, that the state police would meet us there. And we entered the house. At that time, I was also invited to call my parents. I called my dad and my mom, and my dad met me at the house, and I gathered clothing, Miriam's clothing and my clothing, and we left. We fled for good under the protection of the state police and assistance from your investigative company.
Yeah, I remember that time to put you under lockdown to get you and your daughter out of Pennsylvania, and you fled out of Pennsylvania into Jersey.
Yes.
What was that time that you were going through it and everything? Did you feel like were you worried that he was going to come after you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I was extremely worried. As a matter of fact, he did. He drove over to New Jersey and was driving by my parents' home, and there were family members of his that were driving by my parents' home, and there was a decision made to file for a restraining order, and we did just that in New Jersey. But then the waters became a little muddy because we were still residents of Pennsylvania, but living in New Jersey, living in New Jersey. And I had at that time been in contact with an attorney, had immediately filed for divorce, and I think all of that came as quite a shock to my ex-spouse. One of the elements of wanting to know who you're, or questioning who did I marry, or who is this person, is that people can lead very manipulative, double lives, and I began to discover very slowly that the person I was married to led quite a double life. And I had to work with you and with state police officials and other officials. I had to work very carefully for my child's safety and for my own safety. Because when you're dealing with someone who is so manipulative, that person is so controlling and so arrogant, and that person believes that he can just move a system in such a way to get you to move back to Pennsylvania, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, and if I remember that the fights, that you had to take on. I mean, whether it be a court venue in Pennsylvania,
Absolutely.
or a filing for a order of protection out of the
Yes.
state of New Jersey, his visitation rights, and we did a lot of surveillance as well. But his behavior clearly showed that this guy was whoever he was.
Exactly. Exactly.
It was not the guy that
No.
you
Right.
woke up to
No.
15 years.
Right. As a matter of fact, the surveillance proved that, he was definitely well and quite involved for a number of years in, the drugs in a large city. He was involved in prostitution. There were elements of pornography. And as each one of these layers began to be pulled back, it sort of increased my confidence in my maternal instinct that yes, I was right. There was something definitely wrong there, and I knew slowly. I began to know slowly that I was doing the right thing. I had to protect my child, and I had to protect myself. And as Miriam was at school, she began to reveal to officials, teachers and whatnot there, that there were weird behaviors that her father would do to her, and that led to a DYFS investigation, and that led to the New Jersey Cares Unit in Stratford, New Jersey. What a godsend they were to my child, in allowing her to speak her truth and allowing her to reveal what was happening to her.
And again, your divorce was filed in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
But you had, living in New Jersey, you had
Yes.
a PFA, or Protection from Abuse
Right,
in
right.
Jersey. You had DYFS, which is a Division of Family Youth Services
Yes.
out of New Jersey. So you had state agencies going against each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Pennsylvania was wanting to give this man
All kinds of rights.
unsupervised
Right. Unsupervised visitations and whatnot. It was a little. I was very overwhelmed by the level of freedom that Pennsylvania was willing to give my ex-spouse in seeing our daughter with the surveillance. Just the surveillance alone
Right.
would have easily raised some eyebrows. And then Miriam's, testimonies in DYFS and the doctors' reports that would travel across the bridge,
Right.
to the court systems and whatnot. And it really wasn't until, I guess it was about 2 years after the filing of the divorce that I really began to have major support in New Jersey regarding in the court system. I began to see it as, well, my daughter and I have been out of Pennsylvania now for 48 months or whatever it is. How are we not residents of New Jersey? And I began to push that on my own. At times, I think attorneys like to sort of play the financial game, of how many times they can get you into the office to talk about something, or why don't we file for this motion and whatnot. And I kept wanting to go for the core, which was, it's very evident to me, and it's extremely evident in the documentation we have in front of us, that this man is incapable of being the healthy parent, a healthy parent in this situation. I need to be the healthy parent for this child. And everybody kept saying to me, oh, there's no way, his parental rights will be terminated, that Nancy, you can't do that. You watch too many of these shows on TV and this and that and everything.
And you had some walls
Yes.
that you had to knock down.
Yes.
I mean, Pennsylvania had a court order. Was it a custody evaluator or?
Yes, it was custody evaluation.
And if I remember correctly, they were saying this man should have unsupervised visitation.
Yes, and when that I began to, as time went on, I think one of the elements of domestic violence is that the victim at some moment stops becoming the victim and realizes that you are a survivor. And that's when the fight really began. And I kept saying, I won't send her, I'm not sending her. And that's when I was tossed into court systems and whatnot. And I just kept putting up the fight because I knew in my soul, in my maternal soul, that this child should be nowhere near this individual.
Yeah, I mean, the fight that you had to encounter on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every time you turned around, it was something. I mean, he had his own attorneys.
Yes, yes.
Okay, he had
Yes.
some people that were professionals, court-ordered custody evaluators in his corner, and you had to contend with that day in and day out. And you knew, I knew, from doing the surveillance on him and so forth, what kind of monster he really was. They tell me we got to go for a break again, Nancy. So
Okay.
sit tight. Listeners, this is going to get, each minute's going to get more interesting for you. So stay with us, and we'll be back right after station break. Thank you.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated offers a wide array of investigative services to law firms, insurance companies, individuals, private organizations, and corporations. Our goal is to reach the case objectives and resolve the client's issues as quickly and cost-effectively as possible. Local investigative services include identity, wrongful death, drug, alcohol, and abuse, and divorce, support, custody, and family investigations. For more information, call or click today. Accredited Investigations, when you need to know.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated. Professional, licensed private detectives with over 28 years of experience, providing comprehensive nationwide services. Our extensive and diverse team offers discreet and confidential consultations. Our state-of-the-art technology and investigative resources allow us to stay in front of other investigative companies. We welcome the opportunity to earn your trust and deliver you the best service in the industry. Call Accredited Investigations Incorporated at 866-821-5258.
You're listening to the Private Eye Nightline with host John Ciacchio. To ask a question or express a concern about today's program, please call toll-free 1-866-472-5788, 1-866-472-5788. You may also send an email to info@pinightline.com. Now, back to the show.
Okay, thank you to our listeners for standing by with us, and thank you to Nancy Payne for sharing what's got to be a heart-wrenched, just pulls at your heartstrings for what you and your daughter had to go through in a 7-year ordeal. But whatever you did, I got to tell you, you look great today, and I know the moment I started talking to you that you would survive this, but only you can have the credit for protecting you and your daughter, because I've never seen anybody fight like you did. And that, I think it was your mother, being a mother's instinct to protect your child. It just took over. It was like synchronized.
I think a lot of whether it's the mother or the father, I want to call it the healthy parent, call that person the healthy parent. I think the court system at times, and I don't mean this in just making a generalized statement. There are some court systems in which it's almost a bully behavior. Like you must send the child to see the other parent. You must do da 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 da. And really, I don't have to must do anything. If my internal instinct, if my maternal instinct, or if I was a father, if my paternal instinct was telling me there's something wrong here with this picture, I need to act on that. And As a teacher, I've been a teacher for 22 years. And I've sat in a number, thousands, frankly, guidance office meetings with troubled teens. And so many of their troubles come from or are linked to having to have contact with a parent who is either the addict or the abuser or, this parent was involved in some illicit behavior. Kids don't always fare well
No,
in those situations.
It's a very good point.
It really, they really don't fare well. And one of the very first ways that, educators become aware of those situations is the child begins failing classes in school. And once you begin asking some questions and begin poking around a little bit, you discover that this girl or this young boy has to see this parent every other weekend, whether that parent's at a halfway house or an addict or, and you sometimes think to yourself, well, on one hand, it's very good that children have connections with their biological parents. But on the other hand, the damage that's done.
Yeah, and kids
sometimes irreparable.
are treated like numbers.
Yes,
okay?
absolutely. Just push them through the system.
Files, let's move that paperwork through. And it's even more devastating when there's, parent evaluators or custody evaluators are supposed to be on behalf of the court.
Right.
And protect the children's interests as well. When you say, do I send that child or not, and a custodian evaluator says you have to, then you're worried about, what's the repercussions from my actions? What is the court's going to be, and how negative will they be? Because I've seen firsthand, parents don't cooperate in visitation exchange, get hammered in courts.
Right. Well, that almost, as you are well aware, that when I told the court no, I was sent to a room to I was almost like arrested, and when I finally got to the room, the officer looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me? The court sent you to me." Like, just looking at me, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Really? And he quickly took some information from me and he said, "Please get out of my office. I have other more important issues," parents who are in very serious, I don't want to say situations, but who just need serious attention. And you are now standing on your own 2 feet and you're fighting this thing. Just keep fighting. And please get out of my office. And I left and I wasn't fined and I was not.
No,
I think a lot of it was a scare tactic to again, that whole control forced issue. And I just kept vocalizing that my instinct is telling me this is really not the right thing to be doing for this child.
Yeah, I mean, more than your attorneys fighting for you, it was your push, because firsthand, the physical abuse, the threats to you and your daughter, but then again, through what we conducted, through the investigation, the surveillance, this guy was buying chemical drugs on the streets of Philadelphia. He was keeping company with prostitutes. Anger issues galore. This guy was a psychopath. In fact, I think one of the judges did call him a psychopath.
Yes.
All right, so at that point in time, you left Pennsylvania, you joined the Seek Help in some of the state agencies
in Jersey.
to help you. And I got to tell you, you talk about a chess game. That was probably some of the smartest moves you did.
Yeah.
Where you had two states fighting.
Yes.
And trying to trump each other.
Yes.
That was, from where the seat I sat in, that was a great maneuver. And I think it gave you time to regroup, and it afforded you protection. Coming out of the, let's let's move forward now, okay? How many years did it take for you to get a divorce?
Well, I filed in, what was it, 2006, and that went through fairly quickly. It was the custodial piece that kept getting that it just kept getting clogged, because he would make a request, or he would make a motion in the court system to see her, and then he wouldn't see her, or there would be no motions made for 10 months.
Right.
And I mean, it was extremely, just like the behavior was extremely sporadic, inconsistent, and and through surveillance, we figured out that he was very much involved in other areas of his life, like drug addiction and prostitution and pornographic trades and whatnot. So moving through the court system, I guess the divorce took about a year. The custodial piece came to there was finality in 2008. Mid 2009 maybe, when I was told by an attorney, a Pennsylvania attorney, to that I had to go to the some kind of custodial review. That I had never once petitioned nor asked for child support. I never once petitioned or asked for alimony. I knew, and every attorney I spoke with said, "You're crazy." And I said, "No, really, I'm not. What I really want is safety. I don't care one iota about a dollar."
You wanted to cut all ties.
Cut it.
There's a
because-
guy who was making over $500,000 a
Yeah,
year,
I was just- I
and
knew.
you didn't care.
No. And you will. There were no motions made for child support. There were no motions made for alimony. And then I had an attorney in Pennsylvania tell me, "Nancy, you have to make a motion. You must. It's been too long. You have to make a motion for financial support," because that particular attorney, brilliant attorney, said to me, "I have a feeling that will make him walk away." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he said, "You have to go where his God is, and his God is money." And so I was extremely reluctant about making the motion. As a matter of fact, we were even questioned by the court. "Why did you wait so long? We don't have any motions here ever." And I said, "Because I'm interested in my safety and in my child's safety. That's really all I want." But so we made the motion, and we went to the table, and that was the first time I'd seen him in 3 years or however long it had been. And through some work from attorneys in New Jersey, Miriam's name had been changed to my last name. And when that paperwork was tabled, my ex-spouse completely flipped out, threw pens, threw papers, kind of freaked out the custodial agent who was sitting there. And I'm like, "This is a good classic. I kept thinking, this is classic. This is exactly what I dealt with."
Now,
You know.
your daughter, okay, her own request.
Yes.
Wanted her name changed.
Yes.
And,
Yes. Made that request to a New Jersey attorney, actually.
And she's underage. She's a juvenile.
Yeah, she still is, but yeah, at that time she was young.
Yeah, and this is great stuff that she, on her own, stood
Yes.
up and said, "I
Yeah.
want my name changed." Going back to the custody issues, I remember with the court giving him the unsupervised. I remember
Yes.
doing surveillance on him. I remember one time he took
She went twice.
your daughter and one of his nieces into the woods.
Yes.
And
Yes.
everything. In fact, we used that argument
Yes.
to say no more.
Yes. Some very questionable behaviors happening in a long walk in the woods.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of stuff that where attorneys want to show the court to work with them and everything.
Right.
But they're not going to be
No.
or feel what a parent would feel and so forth. And it was the position you took said no more.
Yeah, that's it.
You
No
know,
more. As a matter of fact, I took that position. I really took that position home in New Jersey. My Pennsylvania attorney didn't know that I went to the New Jersey courts, and perhaps we could talk about that.
Yeah. When we come back from break, I just want to. It was interesting again how you left Pennsylvania and you seeked protection of not only for you but for your daughter from the state of New Jersey. All right, listeners, look, we're going to go for break, station break here, and when we get back, we're going to pick up right where we left off. You're listening to Private Eye Nightline. My name's John Ciancio. I am your host. Okay, thank you. We'll see you in a little bit.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated offers a wide array of investigative services to law firms, insurance companies, individuals, private organizations, and corporations. Our goal is to reach the case objectives and resolve the client's issues as quickly and cost-effectively as possible. Local investigative services include identity, wrongful death, drug, alcohol, and abuse, and divorce, support, custody, and family investigations. For more information, call or click today. Accredited Investigations, when you need to know.
Accredited Investigations Incorporated. Professional, licensed private detectives with over 28 years of experience, providing comprehensive nationwide services. Our extensive and diverse team offers discreet and confidential consultations. Our state-of-the-art technology and investigative resources allow us to stay in front of other investigative companies. We welcome the opportunity to earn your trust and deliver you the best service in the industry. Call Accredited Investigations Incorporated at 866-821-5258.
You're listening to the Private Eye Nightline with host John Ciaccio. To ask a question or express a concern about today's program, please call toll-free 1-866-472-5788, 1-866-472-5788. You may also send an email to info@pinightline.com. Now, back to the show.
Okay, thank you to our listeners for standing by. Again, we have Nancy Payne in the studio today. Nancy, it's great seeing you again. You look great. Again, thanks for sharing with the listeners this heart-wrenching part of your life that you went through. I want you to know that, in this work, I deal with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And the way you were able to handle yourself and protect your daughter, just a pure 100% genuine respect. The way you handled yourself and how you fought to protect your daughter. Going back right before break, we were talking about how your daughter changed her name. Mm-hmm. Stood up, said, "I want my name changed." Mm-hmm. Your ex-husband lost it and pursued, still trying to have FaceTime or visitation time. And even though you were divorced and you pretty much isolated yourself and your daughter into new school systems, new environment, and moving on, he still pursued.
Yes, to the point of winning actually a small motion in the Pennsylvania courts for a reunification meeting, which was to happen in Pennsylvania, and Miriam was required to go. I was told that I would go to jail if I didn't bring her to the reunification meeting. As a matter of fact, I was told right before that actually I couldn't bring her, that it had to be someone else, that I wasn't allowed to be involved in it at all. So a family friend was selected, and Miriam was crying and was extremely upset about having to go to this meeting. And she got into the doorway of the place with the family friend, and she had a few choice words to say to her biological father at the doorway, and then said, "And now I'm leaving." And in her 10-and-a-half little 11-year-old self turned on her heels and walked out. And that was it. I mean, really, where do you go from there? I mean, never have I had anything to do with this child wanting to change her name, all of this. I wasn't even present at this reunification thing, and this kid turned and just said, you be out of my life forever, basically, and turned on her heels and walked out.
Yeah, I think your daughter has a lot of you.
Yes,
I'm
I
not
think
sure,
so.
but I think so. Is the fact that, like you said, such an effect on her to go in there, and emotions had to be running wild
Oh, yeah.
for such a young age. But the fact that she found that courage, she stood up to him, and she spoke her piece. And when she was done, she exited.
That was it. And I was told by many, particularly the Pennsylvania attorneys, I was told that, if she doesn't have connections with her biological father, she's going to have problems later on in her life, and, she's not going to do well in school, and she's going to fail this and fail that, and, you're going to see it. She's going to get involved in drugs, and, they would paint this very terrible picture. My daughter is 15. She's an honor roll student. She's just a beautiful, beautiful individual. And granted, I am biased. I'm her mom.
No,
But,
I've followed.
I
I followed you and your daughter's
a clean
career. She's
kid.
a beautiful voice, a beautiful person inside and out, and I can see that you glow from just being her parent. But she really is such a beautiful child.
It's a shame. I understand that the court system is created the way it is, and that it really can't get to know people as it probably should. But I knew in my soul that if I just kept this child safe, that everything was going to be okay. Not everybody has the capability of. I mean, I guess men have, and women, right? Everybody has the capability of being a parent. But really, it takes a very special person, to be a dad and to be loving and caring. And this man, as I grew to discover, would never have been capable.
No.
And so, sadly, and yet, thankfully, Miriam is very safe and very happy, and she's a great kid.
At some point, he gave up.
Yes. Well, I think I don't know what it was like that day when Miriam walked into that place, and whether it was divine intervention or just the courage that this child had. I mean, after being away from her abuser for so long, she just looked at him and said, I never want anything to do with you again, ever. And there were few choice words she had to say to him. She actually, naturally she came home, she told me what she said, and she said, you will never attend my 8th grade graduation, you will never attend my high school graduation, you will never come to my wedding, and you will never see your grandchildren. And she was 10 and a half.
Wow.
Now, what kind of child has that to say? I mean, so there was definitely some kind of divine intervention, something there to give her the courage to say those things. And I don't know, as a parent, once you hear that, does that make you give up? I don't know. I'm not him, and frankly, I don't ever
I don't
wanna
know, and it doesn't help. I mean, your case, because the interstate issues from Pennsylvania, Jersey, and the courts and the fights and evaluators saying you must, and you and your daughter individually and collectively
Yes.
taking positions.
Right.
No, we will not. This is the type of case that should show the courts when they push the evaluators, whether
Right.
it be parent evaluators, custody evaluators, or psychiatrists. This is the kind of case that you'll learn firsthand. Talk to the people.
Especially the children.
And don't just
the
say,
children.
okay, you have rights, okay?
Yeah.
Because if you recognize the parents' rights, there are so, like you were talking earlier, there are so many children out there that
Oh,
are
please.
damaged
Yes.
because
Yes.
you've suffocated and you pushed those rights
Yep.
on them and everything. And I think that courts need to go back at the parents and say, you know what? You are not going to see this child until you do A, B, C, and
Right.
D.
Right.
And you know what? Until you do, you're not going to, but courts are slow. to
Yeah.
do that. And I don't know if it's the courts so much as the attorneys, because I know you had some really good
They were
attorneys helping you.
phenomenal.
And some were giving you some real bad advice that you had to
Yes.
say goodbye to.
Yes, yeah. But they were those, the very final, the last attorney I did have, and I had three in the course of the time of the case. The final attorney didn't I just sort of, I guess, reached a point where I was like, I'm done. I'm done with everybody trying to tell me how to handle this reunification thing and Miriam and whatnot. And I decided to drive myself to the Superior Court of New Jersey one day. It was the day before, it was the day before Holy Thursday. And it was a Wednesday. And I drove in and I said, I want FaceTime in front of an attorney. I need to protect my child. There was a reunification meeting. And even though she told her biological father basically where to go, I have a feeling that, that may get worse. And I waited 8 hours to see the judge that day. I sat in the hall and I waited. And actually, all the judges went home. And I saw a court-appointed official, Mr. Rivera. I'll never forget him. And he came and he sat and he talked with me. And he said, wait a minute, wait here. And I said, I'm not going anywhere. I've been here quite a while. And a phone call was made, and a judge came in, Judge Silverman. And I went into her courtroom, and I approached the table, and she said, where is your counsel? And I said, they're not here. I've come on my own. And she said, who are you? and I told her my name, and I told her what had been happening. And she said, where do you live? And I said, my daughter and I live in New Jersey. We've lived here for 2.5 years. And she reached around to the back and she got a book and she looked at something. She said, ma'am, you have been a resident of the state of New Jersey for 2 years. You are under my jurisdiction. And bang, bang, bang went the gavel. And she said, give me the paperwork you have. And she immediately flipped the whole case on its back. And she picked up the phone and she called the court system over there and clotheslined it there. And she said, I want you to walk out of here and call your attorney and tell him where you are. And when I called my attorney on his cell phone, he said, what did you do and where are you? and I said, I'm in the courts of New Jersey. He said, no, read to me the words on the wall. Where are you? And I said, I'm in the Superior Court of the state of New Jersey. And he said, oh my God. And then that was it. And my ex-spouse's parental rights were terminated. And I was awarded full sole legal physical custody of my lovely daughter.
Well, I can tell you, it's not often in this business that you see people, but how you and your daughter were able to overcome this, the fight, and how well you fought that fight, and where you have you and your daughter, and your daughter really, again, she's a godsend. She has such rebounded from this.
She's very resilient.
And she shines every day, both in beauty and intelligence. And it's all you. It's because of you.
I have to, in all sincerity, if it weren't for picking up a Yellow Pages that one day when I was extremely, bruised, and I came across your name, and it was connecting with you and your entire staff, and then the state police on both sides of the bridge. Miriam and I were very much surrounded by people who cared enough to keep us safe. So.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I really appreciate that.
assisted.
All right. Well, guess what, listeners? They're telling me we got to wrap it up. An hour goes by real quick here. So we're going to ask you to come back next Friday, 7 a.m. on Pacific time and 10 a.m. on Eastern Standard Time. I want to say thank you to Nancy Payne for joining us today and sharing such an emotional time in her life with us. Listeners, we're going to look at possibility of moving our show to a night show during the week. So Voice America is looking at that and seeing what the schedule is available. We'll keep you in tune to what our schedules will be. If you have any questions, jot us an email. Again, everybody, thank you for listening today. And Nancy Payne, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks again for joining us this week. The Private Eye Nightline will be back next Friday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Variety Channel. John Ciacchio hopes to have you tune in again next week.